What's up, everybody? It's your man KJ the Great, dropping another edition of All Sports Media. But first, I want to say I hope and pray everything is great your way. Now, today we're going to talk about it again, boxing, and the history in the sport of boxing between the lineal titles, the sanctioning bodies, how all this stuff came about, and how that stuff works. So, boxing has always been a thing. Understand by that, I mean, it's always been a thing where people fight, they square off to see who's the best, who's this, who's that. Before all the belts came about, way back in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, they didn't have belts. They just pretty much had men who fought to see who was the best. And one fighter would go around fighting all the best fighters to see who was the best, and consensually he became the champion, or recognized as the champion, or in turn the lineal champion, starting with John L. Sullivan. So when you were recognized as the champion, there was no way you could lose that title. Nobody could strip you of it. Nobody could do anything. The only way you lose that title is by being beat by somebody else. In a sense, you will be known as the man who beat the man. You are the lineal champion, the man who beat the man. And now we'll move on to the sanctioning bodies. The first sanctioning body was the WBA, World Boxing Association, then known as the NBA, the National Boxing Association. They held their first sanctioned match back in 1921 between Jack Dempsey and John Carpentier. That is when you see the first actual belt that you could be stripped of, awarded, or anything else. That was the first one you've seen awarded back in 1921. The second belt that started to be awarded was the Ring Magazine title. Now, the Ring Magazine is not an actual sanctioning body. They are more on the lines of whenever they get involved, lineage is involved. So you can have one fighter with all the belts, but not the Ring Magazine title or the lineal title, in other words. So think about today, you have Earl Spence, who's 28 wins, no losses, no draws, 22 wins by way of knockout. He has the WBA, the WBC, and the IBF title, but he does not have the Ring Magazine title, or he's not recognized as the lineal champion in the welterweight division. The other title is held by Terrence Bud Crawford, who's 38 wins, no losses, no draws. He has that WBO title. Now, whenever they clash, I'm sure the Ring Magazine will be involved, the lineage will be on the line, because they'll be establishing a new line of lineage. But let me backtrack on that with the line of lineage. First, quick lesson. Muhammad Ali is the only 3-time lineal heavyweight champion in the history of boxing. And with the line of lineage, the only way that lineage, since there's no belt, the only way you can crown a new champion without beating the new champion, say the champion retires or dies or something like that, the next line of lineage would have to be established by the next great fighter who is beating, the fighters in that division, just consistently just beating everybody, knocking everybody out, unanimous decision, whatever the case may be. The other way a fighter can lose that lineage is if he moves up or down in weight. That's the only ways. So I talked about the WBA, formerly known as the NBA. And then I talked about the Ring Magazine title. Now, fast forward from that Ring Magazine title came about in 1922. Fast forward years later into 1963 is when the WBC, World Boxing Council, came about. It's the green belt. It's probably, arguably, the most prestigious belt of them all, just considering who's held that belt and, all the, controversy that goes around that belt. Muhammad Ali's held that belt. People like Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, You know, now, like I said, Errol Spence, you got people like Mike Tyson, Lennox Lewis, Holyfield, all those guys, they all held those belts. So with the WBA and the Ring Magazine title, the WBA being a sanctioning body, the Ring Magazine not being a sanctioning body, with the WBC coming in, that became the two-belt era for the next 20 years after 1963. That became the two-belt era. So if you had a WBA champion and a WBC champion and they fought, they were then recognized as the undisputed champion in whatever division they were in. And the Ring Magazine was always in lineage with that, recognizing them as a new line of lineage. So we fast forward to 1983 when the IBF, International Boxing Federation, came about and forming the three-belt era. So now, instead of just the WBA, the WBC, and the Ring Magazine title, which is not a sanctioning body, you have the IBF, a new sanctioning body, forming the three-belt era. So you could have three champions in one division at the same time, but no undisputed, no lineal champion until one guy became undisputed in that division, whichever division it was. Mike Tyson was an undisputed heavyweight champion. He held all three belts. He was he had Ring Magazine title. He was the lineal title champion as well. He was the undisputed baddest man on the planet. He unified all those belts. You know, you can look back on all of his fights. He was knocking guys out left and right. You know, in came a lot of controversy in his career. He ended up losing that undisputed title to James Buster Douglas. He was knocked out, I believe, in the 10th round, pretty much 5-punch combo. It was the biggest upset in heavyweight history. It was the year I was born, actually, February of that year, 1990. It was just, you couldn't explain it. There's no way. Now, fast forward 5 years later, from 1983 to 88, the WBO was formed, World Boxing Organization. Now, with this belt, it was not recognized as a major title until the early 2000s. Now, in boxing, there are a number of sanctioning bodies that are not recognized as a major world title. So, fast forward into the early 2000s when the WBO was finally recognized by the other three sanctioning bodies as a major title. Then we walk into the four-belt era: the WBA, WBC, IBF, and the WBO. And that's where we are today. In today's world, we've only had a handful of fighters collect all the belts and the Ring Magazine title and be a lineal champion as well. On the women's side, you have two-time undisputed fighter Clarissa T-Rex Shields, the GWO. She was undisputed at 160 with all the belts and the Ring Magazine title. She was the inaugural lineal title champion at that division. She moved down to 154, where she beat Marie-Eve Decoeur for all the belts and was the inaugural lineal champion in that division. The only two-division undisputed champion in all of boxing. You have Terrence Bud Crawford, who was undisputed at 140. You know, the likes of those guys, you know, we had Bernard Hopkins and such. You know, there's only been a handful. Now you also have a super middleweight undisputed champion, Saul Canelo Alvarez, who is 58 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw. He's coming off a win against Triple G, a unanimous decision. He is the first Mexican undisputed champion and the first super middleweight champion. So, with that being said, these boxing organizations, these sanctioning bodies, they have to recognize each other in order for it to be a major world title. Now, there's one title that's floating around right now. It's the IBO title. international boxing organization. It is not a major world title. Let me say that again. It is not a major world title. The reason this belt is being perpetrated as a major world title is because of one, Anthony Joshua has held that belt for a long time. He swore up and down he had all the belts, but he did not. At a time, the biggest fight in the sport of boxing was Deontay Wilder, who was the WBC champion at the time, and Anthony Joshua, who was the WBA, WBO, IBF, and IBO champion. Neither one of them had the Lineal title or the ring title. The Lineal champion was Tyson Fury, and still is that to this day. They were supposed to square off, but it never came to fruition. Deontay Wilder ended up fighting a trilogy with Tyson Fury and fought to a draw in the first fight. The second fight was a stoppage in the 7th round. The third fight was a knockout in the 11th round. Tyson Fury took home the green belt and the Ring Magazine title and the Lineal title as well. He retained that one. Anthony Joshua, he ended up going on losing to Andy the Destroyer Ruiz. He got knocked out in the first fight. He came back and won a unanimous decision. In the second fight, he went on to fight Kubrat Pulev. After that, he knocked out Kubrat Pulev in about the 6th or 7th round. Then he went up against Alexander Usyk, who came up from cruiserweight, who was an undisputed champion at cruiserweight, by the way. He put on a masterclass against Anthony Joshua. He outpointed him badly in the first fight. The second fight was closer. It was a split decision, but in my opinion, it was a unanimous decision for Alexander Usyk, who is now 20 wins, no losses, no draws. So now, you know, at this point there's 4 belts, and they're trying to make a 5th belt, the IBO, a major world title. Let's hope that this never comes about, because if it does, we probably will never see another undisputed champion again. Then there won't be any points to having any of the belts, because at that point you'll just have this guy being a champion, this guy being a champion, that guy being a champion. It wouldn't be good for the sport of boxing. And we all know, as the heavyweight division goes in the sport of boxing, so does the sport of boxing. Whenever the heavyweight division is popping, the sport of boxing is popping. There were dead years in the sport of boxing, as some people call it, when the Klitschko brothers, they were on top. It just was not very exciting. The best thing about boxing at that time was who's going to step up and fight Floyd Mayweather and potentially beat Floyd Mayweather. That never happened. He retired 50-0, no losses, no draws. So what I want to explain as well in the sport of boxing, with the WBA, they recognize champions in different ways than other sanctioning bodies. With the WBA, in order to be the champion, they will recognize you as the super champion. So if you are the heavyweight champion in the WBA, they'll recognize you as the WBA super champion. Now, at one point, they had the super champion, the regular champion, and the interim champion. But as of late, they decided to do away with all of the regular and interim titles pretty soon. They already did away with the interim titles, and it looks like the regular titles will follow suit as well, to make it just one champion per division, which is good for the sport of boxing. Because you look at the 135 division, the lightweight division, you have undisputed lightweight champion Devin Haney. He has all the belts. He is the WBA super champion. But Devontae Tank Davis, he's undefeated, and he has the WBA regular title at 135. So he's basically an interim title holder in that division. At one point, he held the WBA 130 Super Championship, the 135 regular championship, and the 140 championship in the WBA all simultaneously. He beat Mario Barrios for the WBA 140 title, and you know, he held all of those at the same time. But what's the point of having 2 regular championships, interim championships, when you could just have the one? Now, let's talk about the WBC. The WBC has been the face of controversy for a long time with the way they do their titles. You got the WBC champion, and then they had the interim champion, which is okay. And then they started to implement a bunch of different titles to cater to one Saul Canelo Alvarez. When he was campaigning at 160, he was the WBC champion. And then he decided to move up to 168 super middleweight when David Benavidez lost his titles on the scales. Again, he lost his titles on the scales. He was never defeated. When Jamal Charlo, he was Saul Canelo Alvarez's mandatory. In order to not fight him, the WBC came up with what they call the franchise title, WBC franchise champion, meaning that's supposed to be a title that you can't lose, but you also can't win. It's something that they award you. He was franchised, so he vacated the 160 belt. Charlo eventually became WBC champion at 160, and Canelo moved up to 168 and collected all the belts. He became undisputed when he knocked out Caleb Sweethand Plants in the 11th round of their fight. That's how he became undisputed. The IBF, they're pretty straightforward about that with theirs. They have one champion and a ranking system, just like all the other ones. They have ranking systems. The WBO as well, they have ranking systems as well. The one thing that they've never done before was rank each other's champions. So that was another reason it was so tough to see undisputed champions in the 4-belt era and sometimes in the 3-belt era, depending on the division. Now going forward, the WBC president, Mauricio Suleiman, and the board of 32 members decided with the other sanctioning bodies, starting in 2023 is what they said, that they're going to rank each other's champions, which in turn would mandate fighters like Gervonta Tank Davis, Devin Haney to fight each other. Also fighters like Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder. We all know the story behind that. Anthony Joshua had $50 million on the table to fight Deontay Wilder, and it never came to fruition. It would mandate those type of fights to come to fruition, which is great for the sport of boxing. At 154, you have undisputed champion Jermell Charlo. He has a fight that's supposed to be taking place in January. That division will soon be deeper because you have Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence, who said after this fight they plan to move up to 154. They have a 2-fight deal, so we'll have to see how that goes. You have fighters like Canelo Alvarez, who claims he doesn't want to fight any other Mexican fighters. And the reason Canelo Alvarez is not viewed as the lineal champion, outright champion at 168 is because he has yet to fight undefeated David Benavidez. That is the reason. You will have fights like that mandated with the sanctioning bodies recognizing each other's champions. So let's just hope that all this comes to fruition. I hope, you guys have a better understanding of how, the lineal title works, how the WBA, WBC, IBF, and WBO titles work. Understand that there are other minor championships that are not recognized as major world champions, like the IBU, IBC, IBO. Those are all minor championships. So I hope you have an understanding of how this all works, how the Ring Magazine title works. So yeah, just let me know what y'all think. Drop a like, drop a comment in the comments section. Follow me on Instagram at NowAllSportsMediaTV. You can follow me on my other Instagram page at KJTheGreat09. Drop a like. Make sure y'all like and share these videos. Let me know what y'all think. Stay blessed.